For many years, the Swiss were known across the world for the caliber of their mercenaries as well as their ability to wage battle. Today, on the other hand, they are well known for their impartiality and the absence of any entanglements overseas or perhaps over land. Therefore, what has changed? And is Switzerland still choosing to maintain its neutrality even during the current war between Russia and Ukraine? Hey folks, welcome back to Darkness Unraveled. In this video, we are going to discuss the neutrality of Switzerland. So make sure to watch the video till the end, because this one is going to be really informative. The conflict in Ukraine is compelling Switzerland to defend its policy of neutrality in international affairs. What has been regarded as a recipe for peace and prosperity for a very long time is now perceived as opportunistic and out of date from a foreign perspective. The conflict in Ukraine has rekindled the discussion on Switzerland's policy of remaining neutral. There are currently two competing groups in the ongoing domestic discussion regarding the meaning of neutrality and the range of its application. The first is traditionalist, and it is mostly represented by the right-wing Swiss People's Party. This camp adheres to a rigorous view of what it means to be neutral. It is making preparations to launch a people's initiative that would amend the Swiss constitution to include full neutrality. The competing side, which is more liberal and represents the majority of the government, is advocating for active neutrality. The Swiss president, Ignacio Cassis, introduced a novel idea known as cooperative neutrality. This was his response to those who questioned how anyone could remain impartial in the face of the Russian onslaught on Ukraine. They wondered how anyone could remain neutral in this situation. Officials have made the announcement that they are going to issue a study for the government that would, among other things, attempt to define how our knowledge of neutrality could evolve further. Switzerland has long since ceased to be considered neutral in the traditional sense. This is hardly a brand new debate. Switzerland, along with the majority of other neutral states, has for some time now been moving away from a traditional concept of neutrality and is moving towards the community of states. For example, ever since it joined the United Nations in 2002, Switzerland has been required to comply with UN sanctions. This is something that most neutral states have done. Switzerland operates under the presumption that the law of neutrality does not apply to military missions carried out by the UN, because in the end, the primary objective of the Security Council is to uphold international peace and security. However, not everyone shares the same opinion. According to Peter Hilpold, an expert in Austrian international law who teaches at the University of Innsbruck, neutrality in the traditional sense is not really compatible with UN membership, and much less so with EU membership. Where does the concept of neutrality go from here? Switzerland has at times definitely not been neutral, writes Stephanie Walter, a professor of international relations and political economy at the University of Zurich. Switzerland's neutrality has been called into question on numerous occasions. For the duration of the Cold War, for instance, Switzerland was implicitly and obviously on the side of the West. In addition to that, it takes a stance on issues pertaining to human rights. During the conflict in Ukraine, Switzerland wasted little time expressing its disapproval of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which was a breach of international law. However, recently something shifted. Switzerland started to adopt the many new EU sanctions against Russia. Because of this, Russia no longer perceives Switzerland as neutral. What exactly does it mean to be neutral? This brings up the question of what exactly the concept of neutrality entails. When Switzerland was given permanent neutrality by the Allies at the Congress of Vienna in 1815, the terms of the pact stipulated that Switzerland would not take part in battles and would not send mercenaries in exchange for the promise that no additional wars would be fought on Swiss soil. This guiding principle has seen only modest transformations throughout the course of history. To this day, the primary obligation of the law of neutrality is for states not to join in hostilities, either directly or indirectly. Neutral governments are required to treat the parties to the conflict in an equal manner. This means that they cannot grant overflights or supply weapons to one side, even through third parties, while ignoring the needs of the other side. Switzerland has restricted the overflights of its territory by members of NATO in recent months due to the fact that these states were supplying Ukraine with weapons. In addition, it did not agree to let Germany and Denmark provide Ukraine with tanks and ammunition that had been purchased from Switzerland. The international community is stepping up its efforts to convince Switzerland to moderate its resolute attitude. Not only is neutrality an important legal notion, but it also plays a role in how people perceive Switzerland. It is essential to Switzerland's national character to maintain its neutrality, hence any attempts to do so should be made with extreme caution. In this way, Switzerland is aiming to persuade other nations that, in the case of a war, would remain neutral while at the same time adhering to a neutrality policy that is both voluntary and adaptable. there is no possibility of joining NATO. As a neutral state, Switzerland is not permitted to join a military alliance such as NATO, even while the world is at peace. This is because NATO requires its members to make a commitment to providing aid to one another. After the conflict in Ukraine broke out, traditionally neutral governments like Sweden and Finland submitted membership applications to NATO, which, from a legal standpoint, is the same thing as a renunciation of their neutrality. So will Switzerland ever become a member of NATO? In contrast, membership in NATO is completely out of the question for Switzerland, despite the new age that has been ushered in by the conflict in Ukraine. In terms of its location, Switzerland is the less vulnerable than either of the Scandinavian countries. Is Switzerland making progress in joining a security alliance in Europe? Nevertheless, it was decided between the Swiss defense minister and the NATO Secretary General during a discussion that took place at the World Economic Forum in Davos that Switzerland and NATO wish to work together more closely in the years to come. According to a survey, even the Swiss people are okay with this, despite the country's overwhelmingly strong preference for neutrality and opposition to NATO membership. The entirety of the globe is having a conversation about neutrality with us. Because of this, Switzerland has been seeking deeper military engagement with its neighboring nations and NATO for years, particularly in the areas of training and cybersecurity. Closer cooperation is not revolutionary in and of itself because Switzerland has been doing it for years. Neutrality does not prevent Switzerland from defending itself in the event that it comes under assault, nor does it prevent Switzerland from joining forces with other countries to do so. One of the pillars of our collaboration with NATO is Switzerland's continued neutrality. The Swiss government adheres to a pragmatic strategy. Because of its location in the center of Europe, it is highly unlikely that a military assault will be launched against Switzerland on its own. It is much more likely that multiple countries in Europe will come under assault at the same time and will have to band together to protect themselves. If Switzerland takes part in military drills during times of peace and provides itself with weaponry that is compatible with that of its Western allies, it won't have to fend for itself and all by itself in the event of an emergency, but will instead be able to fight with its allies. It is for this reason, among others, that it has selected Lockheed Martin, a manufacturer in the US, to produce its new F-35 fighter plane. Switzerland will maintain its neutrality until it comes under attack. This strategy is frequently referred to as freeloading from other countries. Even while Switzerland has expressed a desire to make significant increases in its defense budget, the country is still a long way from meeting NATO's aim of devoting 2% of its GDP to military spending. Some people believe that Switzerland should not receive the benefits of collaborating with NATO if they won't suffer the responsibilities of membership. Switzerland benefits from neutrality. Switzerland is best served by maintaining its neutrality as a foreign policy stance. It might seem counterintuitive, but neutrality actually drives up the price of armaments. Some nations prefer to purchase their military hardware from reliable third parties rather than major powers like the US or Russia because they do not wish to appear as though they are positioning themselves by doing business with these nations. Switzerland also benefits from maintaining its neutrality as a host location and mediator due to the fact that those who choose not to take a stand are seen as more trustworthy when acting in a role that requires them to build bridges. The efforts that Switzerland has made to play a mediating role in the conflict that is taking place in Ukraine have not been successful so far. On the other hand, there are conversations taking place right now about whether or not Switzerland could take on the role of a proactive power mandate for Ukraine and advocate Kyiv's interest in Moscow. And that brings us to the end of the video. Feel free to let us know what you think about this video. And if you like this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.